I'm Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? My guest today is Paul Hecimovich, a very good friend of mine, an entrepreneur, business leader, and really a pioneer in transforming companies and how they look and behave with the environment. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Paul, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here, man.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Super excited about the opportunity and really looking forward to our time together. Big fan of your show. Impressed with the guests that are much deeper thinkers than me and so much more well thought out than me. I've been listening since the beginning and caught up on all the episodes. And each time I'm like, damn, that's one smart person. I don't know what I've got to offer, but I'm really looking forward to the time together and appreciate you and the opportunity and our friendship.
Yeah, right on. Well, that's great. And I appreciate your humility. Certainly, those of us who know you and know your track record and what you've accomplished in life are impressed. So I appreciate that you don't have a big fat asshole ego about it. So great. So let's just start out with like a little brief history of Paul. How did you tell me a little bit about your story and kind of how did you get into business and become who you are today?
Yeah, I think probably, Jeff, I think you've referenced this before, but it's a really popular thought within my own mind about where we are today as people, individuals, is really kind of the rain and wind and salt and sand of your life that forms who you are. So your unique experiences have brought you to this point in your life, and my unique experiences have brought me to the point that I'm at in my life. And really, it all starts with your childhood, right? So I grew up in I guess you could say, a middle-class family with three brothers. My mother and father both came from absolutely dirt poor shit. I went back and saw my dad where he grew up, the house he grew up in. On the Iron Range in Minnesota. My grandfather was a mechanic on the big equipment that went down in the iron ore range. And when I'm talking about big, I'm talking about the tires are taller than you and I are.
Yeah.
But the house sat right on the edge of the mine. And you could call it a house, I would call it more of a hovel or a shack in a small town of a couple hundred people of Marble, Minnesota. And so he was a pretty driven guy, uber successful from his start. But I guess it's a long way around to saying he was a fucking hard charger, not afraid to break out the belt, let my brothers know that, what he's going to accept and not accept. And really, I look at my brothers and myself. I'm the middle. I've got an older brother and younger brothers that are twin. They're all a hell of a lot smarter than I am. But one thing that we all had was a work ethic. That was just, there was no not working and not striving to succeed. And when I tried to cut corners and got caught, I paid the price for it. So I think a lot of what drives me, I don't know if it's daddy issues, if you will, but we were instilled with, hey, you've got to outwork everybody. There's no not outworking folks. So I think that's kind of where it started, and then I bumbled my way through life, tried to cut a lot of corners, got in some trouble as an adolescent, and really was a mediocre student in high school and a mediocre athlete. As a younger kid, I was, probably for my age, I was a really good athlete. And then I went off to high school and didn't go through puberty throughout my high school career. So next thing you know, I'm playing football or attempting to play football with men versus, this scrawny little dude with no hair on his legs. And that pissed my dad off because I'm like, he wanted us all to be the best and, be all conference and all state and all these things. And I just got tired of it. I'm like, fuck this. By my senior year, I was so tired of it. This was kind of my first rebellious step. I'm like, yeah, F this. I'm not playing football as a senior anymore. And that's what we just grew up playing every sport. I mean, you were just, if it's baseball season or basketball season, that's what you did. And I loved it. Don't get me wrong. But, when you can't compete or you don't feel like you're competing on a successful level, it's like F this. And I think that was kind of the beginning of mm, this drive, like I didn't succeed. I quit at something that I'd done my whole life, and I didn't want to feel that again. And I don't know. My dad and I've never had a conversation around this, but my older brother was all state football. My younger brothers were all district or all conference. They'll argue because they're twins about who achieved what. But so anyway, that was like I said, I was a mediocre student, C plus student. And this was back I graduated high school, northwest of Chicago in 1984. I had basically zero opportunity for college. All my buddies were, basically my high school, everybody was going off to a Big Ten school. And at that point in time, I'd been accepted to Northern Illinois University. Nothing against Northern Illinois University, but it's what we called a suitcase college. It was just a middle of fucking nowhere. I didn't want to go there. So somehow one of my buddies, Scott Meyer, his family was going to the University of Iowa. And I said, well, I'd love to go see the campus. And literally, I was fortunate enough to meet with a guidance counselor and admissions counselor and talked my way into the school. And,
wow. Okay.
So long story. So I'm going to tell the final kind of piece of this formidable things. So my dad was pissed off because he didn't want to pay out-of-state tuition. I'm working at the local ice cream shop, riding my bike back and forth to work after school and at night and on the weekends to try to make money for college. And he drives me to school to the university. It was about a 4-hour drive from where we lived to Iowa City, which, by the way, if you've never been, awesome freaking town. Great college campus.
I have. I'm from Omaha originally.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that. Yeah.
So
he pulls up to the corner of the dorm. We carry my first load of shit up. We come back to the car for the other, decrepit suitcase or plastic bag or whatever the shit I was moving in with. And he puts the stuff on the curb, says, see you later. Don't flunk out and don't come home before Thanksgiving. Got in the car and off he went.
Wow.
And I'm looking around and like everybody else's parents are there. They're all going out to dinner, big celebrations, college is starting. I'm like almost in tears.
Yeah.
Wow. But something that he said to me about something struck. It just hit a chord with me. I'm like, and maybe he did it on purpose and maybe he didn't do it on purpose, but I'm like, I'm going to show that motherfucker. I'm going to kick ass. And for 2 straight years, I got nothing but straight A's in college.
Wow.
My first 2 years at Iowa. But I studied. I wasn't naturally smart. I just studied hard, partied my ass off like most, kids do in school, but was able to manage that balance. So started there and then ended up at the University of North Carolina, which another move that I wasn't really super stoked about because my parents had moved from Illinois down to North Carolina, and he wanted me to be in state and made the transfer. It was a pain in the ass to begin with, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me that I didn't choose to do, that he kind of chose for me. So, or my folks chose for me. So good stuff.
So you transferred halfway through. No, you transferred halfway through your college career to UNC.
Yeah. After my sophomore year, I transferred into the undergraduate business school in Chapel Hill. Today it's still part of my blood runs blue because of my time there and just my affinity for the school and the campus and, all of the opportunity that it afforded me from an education perspective.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So there I am. 21 year. I didn't turn 21 till my senior year. So that's 21 years of life in 15 minutes.
Right. Okay, good. So you graduate UNC, and then how do you end up in the battery business? How did that transpire?
Yeah, I knew one thing. I had to have a job when I graduated, and had this grandiose idea that even though my dad and I and my brothers and my dad all had this kind of Rough Rider relationship, hey, wouldn't it be great if we took my dad's years of experience and rolled it into a business, and kumbaya, the brothers all come to work and I'm working there and everything's great. And somehow I convinced my dad to help me start looking for a business. And we spent 2 years and finally bought this rinky-dink battery business. Well, I shouldn't say that because the guy who built it did a hell of a job building it, but it was in a small town called Gastonia, which was is a mill town, not a mill town anymore, but a small town bordering Charlotte.
In North Carolina?
In North Carolina, yep. So It was about 30 minutes outside of Charlotte. And really, the business was set up as installing batteries, and we just started building the business.
Okay. Wow. So, and that business, what was that business called?
That business was originally called Piedmont Battery Heaven. So, and it was literally in an old Jiffy drive-in restaurant. So
okay.
there was no loading dock. There was no, we had put a little bit of racking in there, but every morning we'd come, as the business started to grow, we would haul all the battery pallets out into the parking lot so there was room to get to anything. And then at the end of the day, we'd haul all the batteries, the pallets back into the warehouse, and we would load and unload trucks by hand, truckloads of batteries initially.
Yeah.
And then we got a forklift, and, it was a little bit easier, but still no loading dock. So you're rolling all the batteries on pallet jacks from the front of the truck to the back, or vice versa if you were loading up scrap. So,
yeah. Okay. And what was it called when you sold it?
Well, we moved from North Carolina to South Carolina and changed the name to Carolina Energy. So when the business was eventually sold, which will be 5 years in September, which blows my mind, this September, it was called Carolina Energy. And we had a warehouse there. We had a location in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We had opened a house in Nashville, Tennessee that we eventually closed, but we did, we had that for 18 months, maybe 2 years before, just wasn't working out there. So shuttered that. So we had the 2 locations, and, we grew the business substantially. We went from I think the business was $400,000 in sales the first year. And we were, 25 plus million before we exited that company. And
wow.
So, not a massively huge business, but we were running this business with 10 people, maybe.
Wow.
It's tiny, super tight working force, and just everybody was pitching in, doing everything. There was no frills at any time in that business, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then you sold that business.
Yeah, I did. So at some point in time, Beth and I had gone to a convention, to a Trojan meeting, and we were flying back, and there were some really big battery businesses that were Trojan master distributors at the time. Eventually it became, we had a protected territory where if there was a Trojan battery sold into this market, it would, for us, it was North Carolina, South Carolina, and 13 counties in Georgia when we sold the business. But some of these master distributors were 15 states, 8 states. They were huge. We were tiny compared to these guys. But it's super smart guys. I was always the young, not anymore, but at that point in time, I was the young guy. I was running this business, and, most of the guys were at least 8 to 10 years older than me. A lot of them were second generation in the business. Some of them came from battery manufacturing backgrounds. So it was really a great learning experience for me, because I'd go to these meetings and listen to how these other really successful people ran their businesses. Yeah. And then I had access to the Godber family, who was they were a family-owned, Trojan Battery was a family-owned company, and they were extremely gracious to me and helped me through the business and trusted enough in me and Carolina Energy to allow us to be a master distributor, which was huge. But we were coming back from this meeting, the Trojan master distributor meeting, and I'm like, fuck, man, we're talking about wagon wheel shit. This is, lead acid batteries have been around for forever. We're doing business the same way. We're consigning batteries, and, what's next? There's got to be something down the pike. And that was kind of, that plane ride home was sort of the birth of the idea of what eventually became RELiON. It was just that simple. Me being a dummy on a plane with too much time on my hands, thinking about, I'm going to go conquer the world in the next coming of whatever that battery thing was.
That's great. So, okay. So you built up Carolina Energy, and then you sold it. Right. Yeah.
Really fortunate timing. One of the company called Continental Battery was the first battery company. And I want to say Continental was in 10 or 12 states at the time. And a private equity group decided they wanted to start rolling up distribution. So Continental was the first company that was kind of rolled up. And because of my friendship relationship with the brothers that were running that, Billy and Jim McCann. They reached out to me subsequently and said, hey, would you be interested? And I don't know, I had already kind of launched doing the RELiON thing, and it wasn't RELiON initially. We can talk about that. But anyway, I was, bored with the lead acid business, and I had this it's sort of like you have a teenager, which was Caroline Energy, and you've got this infant, which is this lithium business, and you're focusing all your energy and time on the baby anyway, right? So the timing was perfect, and it was a good setup. So I offloaded the lead acid business and then kept the lithium business.
Great. That's great. And so then you put all your attention and energy into RELiON. Right. What was it called before?
So it never really had a name before RELiON. And I won't call out the name of the company that we invested in, but I love to tell the story that I could have gone out in the parking lot and burned $1 million, $1.5 million and had a hell of a lot more fun than I did in this investment that I made in this company in Florida. But, it was painful in the sense that it was extremely costly. I mean, it's not like I've got just tons of money laying around to lose $1.5 million in a shitty deal and a lot of headache and heartache, but that's essentially what happened. But really what that allowed me to do was I saw enough within that investment that I felt like, hey, there's potentially some legs in this lithium thing. So the shitty investment showed me two things, a couple things for sure, at least, but it showed me that there was potentially a market for these very expensive batteries at the time. It also opened the door to opportunities in Asia, China specifically. I had met a couple people over there from a supply side. Was fortunate enough to meet Lucy, who's like a sister to me, Chinese born, worked in the lithium industry, and really kind of was massively helpful to me in the company at that point in time, sourcing product and taking me around China and showing me the different opportunities and cell manufacturers and pack factories and all of those things. So you could say that the $1.5 million was a complete waste, but was it really a complete waste? Was it worth the education that I got, that there was legs here and sourcing? And so there was some really good that came out of it. And the other thing that came out of it, Jeff, I think that is so underestimated or understated so many times, is really that team. And we were tiny. I mean, I think at this point in time, there was 3 or 4 of us really spending, this was still while Caroline Energy was owned, but there's 3 or 4 people focusing energy on this lithium thing. And it created this sense of teamwork that really carried throughout the time of my ownership at RELiON. It was like, hey, we got this. We're gonna figure this out. It wasn't me. It wasn't this salesperson or this supply. It was us. It was this sense of, like we're the Justice League. I don't know if you used to watch. Yeah. I watched cartoons when I was a kid in the Justice League. So you had Wonder Woman and Batman and Wonder Twin powers activate and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that's sort of what it was. It was, okay, we're going to figure this out. And that's where it wasn't easy at all. We were bleeding money, and I mean bleeding money. And, I had staked. So is the only thing that was, so RELiON's bleeding money, but it's just this little warehouse within the broader structure. And then I sell the big behemoth. In my world, it was a behemoth. In most people's world, it's probably a rinky-dink business, but I thought something to be proud of. I sold the cash cow, and all of a sudden I'm really bleeding because I'm writing checks from money that, when I sold the business, that money was funding the new business. So the pressure just ratcheted up.
You sold the really cash cow, quickly. Which was Carolina Energy.
Exactly.
And then, so now all your focus is on RELiON.
All my focus is on RELiON. Jeff, so it was a real challenge at that point in time, to separate the two businesses. Thank God smart people were there helping me with this process. And somehow we managed to pull the businesses apart enough and start moving forward, just focusing on the lithium side.
Okay, cool. So now RELiON is like an actual thing and you're building the business up. And obviously you worked at that a few years. I'd love to hear about like, being in that business and, and then also at the same time, kind of, watching what's going on with the environment. And I know that you had like, a sort of an awakening moment at some point where you just said, hey, this has to shift and we want to fold our company into this movement. So tell me about that. How did that come about? How did you transform?
Again, I go back to this whole idea that you end up at a point in time in your life and all of these things have transpired that you've been part of or that have happened around you that shape you. And there was a couple of things that kind of brought the company to that moment. First, we had been very specific about creating a brand, and there were some great people that, helped me really realize how important that was early on, even before we started creating a brand. David Chambers was instrumental in suggesting, hey, as he called everybody mate, because he's British, mate, we've got to have a brand. It's really important that we have a brand. And he was right. And in that brand building process, I brought in a college buddy of mine that was focused in sector of business, a company called Dryfly. And really, we sat down at the very beginning and said, okay, what is this? What's this brand? What are we going to stand for? So we had built created these pillars that we were going to live by, and we did live by, and was really instrumental. So you get that, then we went out and hired a marketing. We hired Danielle to run the marketing department, and all of these things were leading up to this moment, right? Then all of a sudden COVID hits. Yeah. And so this is all right in the heart of COVID, Jeff, where these things are happening. And the other thing too, that I don't want to miss is Carolina Energy didn't do enough, in my opinion, to give back. We sponsored the local YMCA teams and, donated here and there, but there was never a driving force to that business. So here we are, COVID happens.
And this was something, now was that something that kind of had haunted you?
Pissed me off.
Okay.
But I was too stupid, man. I'm trying to feed my family. And early on, I'm like, I'm freaking loading trucks, 80 batteries that weigh 62 pounds a piece by hand, delivering the batteries to the customer, trying to find new customers, hustling, cleaning the toilets, trying to figure out how the hell you run the books, right? Because I'm not smart enough to figure all that out. But so, it's just at that point in time, I got 4 kids. Life is spinning out of control. You're just trying to keep up with shit, right? So shame on me because I never really stepped back and said, man, what the hell am I doing to give back? We took great care of our people from day one, but we weren't giving back to the community. So flash forward, you've got the brand, you've got COVID, you've got all the salt and sand of life, and the fact that I feel like I failed in being a giving back in a much broader and bigger perspective. And, what did anybody do during COVID? You stayed in your home. You were scared to go to the freaking grocery store. I spent a lot of time just walking. Like I'd walk around the neighborhood for hours, walk my dogs and listen to podcasts. And I started hearing about and listening to all of these stories, self-made companies that were really focused on giving back. Like, hey, how do I return to the greater community or the greater world in a very positive way? I came back from walking one day and heard a podcast. I don't even remember specifically what it was about. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. I picked up the phone and called Danielle and I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And that's where at that moment, that was the epiphany where Limitless Blue was started. And it wasn't even called Limitless Blue at the time. I can't even remember what it was called, but it was Blue something that I had just randomly thought about while I'm walking down the road. And Danielle and her team took that and made it so much greater than I could have ever done. But so Danielle and I had this conversation. Hey, this is what I want to do. And we kind of threw it out there. The company's growing. We were really fortunate, Jeff, in the sense that we were a remote company anyway. I mean, Christine was with us and she's in California, and Craig's with us and he's in another part of California, and Ronald's with us and he's running the technical department in Seattle. And We had people in Georgia and, a few people running the warehouse. And so COVID never affected us from that perspective, but it affected us from the ability to not be in front of customers and not be together as a group. So everything was remote.
And no trade shows and none of that stuff.
Nothing. Yeah, everybody's world kind of shifted, but we were fortunate in that sense. But so, I reached out to the group and we just said, hey, if anybody's interested, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take whoever wants to be part of this, and we're going to start figuring out how we're better stewards as a business, better individuals, more conscientious about things, environment, water, helping people become entrepreneurs themselves. We've done a little bit of all of that, and it was amazing. 5 or 6 people immediately responded and said, hey, I want in. I want to be part of this. This is really cool.
So you offered it up to the people in your company. You said, hey,
right.
Listen, we want to do something bigger. We want to do something related to the environment. We really want to, make a difference for people.
Sure.
What do you guys think?
Yep.
And everybody in the company jumped at the opportunity.
So it was not everybody, but so initially it was, okay, 4 people said, hey, I'm in. So we started having conversations, like it became part of our regimen, right? Like, so you have meetings about sales and you have meetings about supply, you have meetings about whatever, how you're going to collect accounts receivable, how you're going to make the bill, pay the bills, do you need a new truck? I mean, all of those things that go on in a normal business, but this just became part of our regimen. So this group would meet and start on their own time, would start researching, hey, how do we go about this? Like, what have other really cool companies done? And what can we leverage? What can we use that would be a fit for us? Mm-hmm. And I think it was Danielle found 1% for the planet. And that was essentially a commitment that, and again, we're bleeding money. It's not like we're this uber successful company. We're on the cutting edge of taking the idea of what lead acid battery sizes were. And our kind of idea behind that was we want to put lithium in these sizes. So there's no market for this. There's nobody ringing the doorbell saying, hey, Christ, we need 2 truckloads of this. I mean, we got freaking jazzed if we sold 2 batteries, right? So all of these things are going on. And we made this commitment that no matter what, we were going to donate 1% of revenue. 1% of revenue, not profit, 1% of revenue to within the 1% organization there. They give you just massive lists of all of these companies that they vetted. So they've done the homework. These are legitimate
that you can donate to. So they vetted all of these. 1% of the planet is its own organization.
Yep.
And they've vetted all these different nonprofits that are actually doing things that make a difference.
Yep. You pay to become a member of 1% for the planet.
Okay.
I don't remember the entry fee or whatever, the annual fee. And then you commit that through donations of money, time, and advertisement that you include 1% for the planet, that you're going to end up donating 1% of your revenue. So that's where, where we land it. So, all of these things are going on and we're in this crucible of trying to figure out, hey, how do we monetize this business? Like, I mean, great, we're going to sell whatever, and we're going to give away 1% of that. And how are you going to make payroll? And how are you going to do all these, grow the business? Because you need capital to grow the business. So in my typical fashion, I come in on the horse and break out the 6 shooters and come up with this idea and have no freaking clue how we're going to make it all work. And how we made it work, quite honestly, is great freaking people. I mean, people like Christine and Danielle and Charlie and Michael, everybody that was involved in the company. And we talked about it so many times, Jeff, and it was one of my favorite things to remind the team, we're in this crucible and it's boiling freaking hot. And I was a dick. I mean, I had so much pressure I felt so much pressure that I felt like if I was a bigger asshole and yelled louder and cursed more, that all of a sudden the magic fairies would come in and make it all work. Unfortunately,
that's what happened.
well, let me see. I don't have any fairies on my shoulders, so that probably isn't how it worked. But what did work is when I'm like, I backed off a little bit. And I'm like, man, everybody here's busting their ass. I've got this amazing committed team and everybody wants it to work. Mm-hmm. And everybody's working around the clock. So I'm like, I can kick and scream and yell, but that's not going to change anything. And I think that we all grow, and become, hopefully we become smarter. I mean, some steps you make you smarter and some make you dumber, I guess. But I think the epiphany for me was realizing that these people loved the company. They loved the brand. They loved each other. And they were all killing themselves to make it work. So you had that going for us. And then you throw in this Limitless Blue idea. And that was like gasoline on this fire. It was like, it just melded everybody. It brought everybody together and like, we're really doing something cool here. We're a leader in this burgeoning industry of lithium batteries. And we were a leader. We still are a leader. The company's still a leader. We were out in front. And you know that because all of our competitors basically started copying what we were doing.
Right.
And then you throw in, hey, we're doing some really cool things. We're giving back. We're helping Kula Project build a school so that the people there can learn how to be entrepreneurs and start their own coffee growing business. And
tell me more about that. What is that?
So the Kula, we did all kinds of cool stuff, but the Kula Project was one of the nonprofits that and again, we would sit down and we'd have a meeting and we'd say, okay, what do we care about? We as a small group that was running Limitless Blue, and what does the broader group? Because we'd throw it out to the entire company, the entire organization, and say, hey, we've got our revenues are going to be X this year. We're going to need to give 1% of that. Is there anybody that's interested in anything in their community? And one of the things we did focus on too, Jeff, was we wanted to do things local. So we had operation in Seattle. We had an operation in South Carolina. We had folks in California. So we were picking things. Some of the nonprofits we were choosing were working in those communities because it was close and it was near and dear to our hearts. One, two, you could donate time, albeit very difficult because of COVID. And then we started doing some things more internationally. And I was drawn to Kula because...
And this is all through 1% for the planet.
All through 1% for the planet. Okay.
So through 1% of family, you found this organization called Kula. And they make coffee in Africa or something?
So essentially, this group was going in and teaching women how to be entrepreneurs. Okay. So that they could build a business, and it was basically a coffee business, right? So they would bring them in, and again, I'm not an expert on their business, and I don't want to pretend to be, but we would sit down and we would interview the owner or the founder or the team that was running these 1% or these nonprofit organizations to understand, hey, is this a good fit for us? Are they doing something that we feel really good about? And what struck me with this was, one, they were teaching people how to be entrepreneurs. Right. I freaking love entrepreneurship. I think it's the greatest business venture any person can do. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass and it's risky and people fail all the time and your nuts are on the line every day. Mm-hmm. But if you have the gumption to go do it, the rewards are pretty freaking great too. The satisfaction of it. So that was really whether it was coffee or they could have been knitting socks, and I don't mean that in a belittling way. It didn't matter. It was entrepreneurship. They were teaching these ladies how to be entrepreneurs and feed themselves and feed their families and create a business. And that's really how we ended up there. And this is the other thing too, Jeff. These folks, these nonprofit organizations are struggling because they're dealing with COVID too. So it's not like they're getting on planes and being able to go. So this school building project is really, we committed to this 2-3 years ago, and it's just really taking shape now.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. So
we committed to the money, we sent them the money, and then the year that was it was 3 years ago, and now they're actually putting this into no fault of their own. Again, this was all driven by, your inability to really get around the world for such a long period of time. So if they need to get to Africa to get this set up, you got to be able to get there. You got to get a team in there. You got to worry about, restrictions getting in and out of different countries and or communities, and not even just the government restrictions. Maybe the community doesn't want you to come in because they're worried you're going to,
bring COVID,
compromise the health of the community.
Right.
So just so many moving parts and pieces that were going on, over this period of time that, they're facing their own struggle.
Yeah. So okay. So you had an epiphany. You were like, look, my whole life I've been, my whole entrepreneur life, I've really been wanting to contribute, but I haven't been able to do that. I haven't seen the way forward to do that. Now I get it. Now it's really important. It's very important that our mission be a larger mission and one that commits to the planet. You got everybody on board in your company, and then you started Limitless Blue, which is
right.
That's just a thing that is within RELiON, right? That's a commitment that all of your employees made, right? I know this because my wife. By the way, the reason we're talking is because my wife, used to work for Quality.
Dumb enough to put up with my shit for all those years.
She really helped you out. I mean, let's be honest.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
She did. You guys helped each other out, but that's
100%.
That's true. No, for sure. 100%. But so you got her and the whole team on board. What is Limitless Blue? What does that mean?
So what it was, when I still owned the company, was it became an organization within the organization, if you will. And we believed in it so much, Jeff, we as a group, as a company, that I felt like if it's that important to us, then we're going to live, breathe, eat, sleep this every day. And you can't do that if you're the CEO of the company, or you're running the sales department, or you're the head of marketing. You need somebody there. That's their job, right? We were that committed to it. And I had the perfect person to bring in, my daughter, Megan, who to basically, that was her job. We brought her in to live, eat, sleep, and breathe this for the company and drive it for the company. And the reason I say she was the perfect fit is she has this really great heart. And when she graduated from school, she was working for Teach for America and really, in her own way, giving back to the community. And she had an affinity for that. And that's the type of person we needed, that could come in and one, just from the minute we even talked about it, she was all bought. This is like, oh, this is perfect. I really want to be part of this. And then that was her job every day. That's what she focused on. And now you've got a leader within that organization, which I really think no matter what you do, if you're not living and breathing it every day, you don't go and train to do a race and do it today and then drink 16 beers. Well, some of us like me do, but and not train for 3 days. You got to go do it and 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 live it. And that was so important. So Limitless Blue just became this really powerful lightning rod within the organization that just day after day and month after month and year after year just became so wonderful, and it made us such a better company. It's not even about the money that we gave or the time that we donated. That's all super important. But there's certain things within life that just kind of, it just meshes. And that was kind of almost like, hey, we were baking a cake, and we weren't even looking for it. We just found the perfect icing for that cake, which was Limitless Blue.
So what is that? What does that mean? Isn't there like a series of kind of commitments that you guys make on a personal level? Like,
from a personal perspective. So it's strange that
somebody else wanted to copy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was.
What are the parameters there?
I think it meant different things to different people within the organization, Jeff. It was never, hey, here's the guidelines, and you're going to sign a document that says, hey, you're going to live your life this way.
I get it. It's more of a commitment to the planet.
Right, it's more of, hey, how does what we're doing as an organization as a company as Limitless Blue, which is really just our branding around this. Yeah, the effort. Thank you. So, but within the company, we started doing things like, hey, the company bought everybody a home garden. Okay, still COVID, but we all had gardens, and that was a small way of reducing our footprint on the world. Right, we're all growing strawberries or herbs or whatever everybody chose. They could pick their own vegetables or whatever. And then we would create contests around it. Who grew the best garden? So it became, this is what I'm talking about, where it became part of it was interwoven within the fabric of the company. Then we started talking about just plastic and what a shit show plastic is in our environment today. And I became so, like, it drives me absolutely nuts when I go into a Target or whatever and I look at everything's plastic. I like to eat fresh fruit and everything's in a fucking plastic bubble
container. Yeah.
It pisses the ladies off when I go to the grocery store because I won't put my limes or lemons or apples in a, the little plastic bag they give you. My shit's rolling around on the turnstile as they're ringing up there's one grapefruit and there's another one down there, because I don't want to add. So, but it became omnipresent. We started a little newsletter and we started, hey, what are you doing today to reduce your footprint? Little things. I mean, I started composting and other people started composting. And, we would, if somebody found a really cool product that reduced the footprint, whether it was plastic or something else, they would share it with the group. And it just became almost, for a lot of us, how we lived our lives. Our lives, the way we lived changed because of Limitless Blue. Yeah. So just super freaking powerful.
Yeah. So then how does that affect your personal experience of life? Like, how does that change having this commitment? How does that change your overall confidence in life, your feeling of purpose?
Makes you feel small. It does. I mean, I look at the things that RELiON and Limitless Blue have done over the years, and just a level of pride that's I can't put into words, Jeff, what we did, not what I did or what great idea. It's what we did. It's just amazingly cool to think about it. And then I look at people that are doing things on scale so much larger than me. Chef Andreas and his World Kitchen, or what Doc Henley's doing with Wine to Water. I mean, these folks it's just so damn cool. Yeah. So what it's done for me is it's made me feel insufficient despite the things that we have done. And it just makes you thirst for more. It's sort of like you achieve some level of adrenaline or, whatever just jacks you up, gets you so excited. And once you taste it, you just want more and more of it. And that's where I am today. Like, okay, what's next? How do I personally do more? What does my next venture, if I'm fortunate enough to have start another company, what's that going to do? And what's that look like? And how much plastic can I not use tomorrow? And I feel like that's right. That whole thing left a mark on everybody in the company. Some, let's be honest, it's like anything else. Some much more so than others. But I was just in Dallas babysitting my granddaughter, Megan's daughter, and I look under her counter and she's got one of the products there for her dishwasher where she's not buying a 16,000 gallon plastic bottle to run her dishwasher. It's in a metal tin that you drop a tablet in, and so there's such a sense of in very small ways, if everybody just did a little bit of something, you're making, in life, I've got way more questions than I do answers, Jeff, and I'm bumbling my way through it. But I want to look at the positive things and think about, the impact that was good, because we can all focus on all the shit that we think's not good or not healthy or the world's falling apart or whatever. But if you focus on those small wins, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I would submit that, the fact that you really did shift the whole culture of your company to really being focused on how are we giving back and what are we giving back and how does that look and how do each of us reduce our footprint and how do we contribute to each other? That changes the whole. I mean, that shifts the paradigm of business from being a total consumer to being a contributor, where you're
Right.
part of the solution, where you're finding purpose in your life and your career and your business in a way that's contributing, which I think is really like, that's the reason I wanted to talk to you is that I believe that the shift that you made in your company and really altering the focus to one of being a contributor, somebody that's helping the planet, somebody that's consciously thinking about, well, wait, how do we keep this going, and not so consumed with the materialism of it all. Like that's an example that we could all follow. And I think you've done a great job of that.
Well, thank you for that, Jeff. And I think in a small way we did do that. And to my earlier point, there's people out there doing this on such a grander scale. I really hope that we can all be more selfless.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about we as a company. I'm talking about we as a population,
Humanity.
as human beings, right? As a species. How do we become less judgmental and be more focused on others and not on ourselves? Some of your podcasts are focused on, and I don't remember the exact terminology, but everybody trying to gather and hoard and have so much, versus, hey, what's enough?
Yeah. Scarcity.
That was one of my dad's really poignant moments with me when I was talking to him about, should I sell this business or should I hold on to it? And he said, Paul, what's enough? You've got to be able to step back from it and really understand, what's important. And one other point about like the families, one of the things that I took great pride in both companies was, and also a huge sense of responsibility not to fuck it up, is there's X number of people and their families are counting on this business to give them, supply a paycheck for the amazing work that they're doing and be able to sustain that over time. So with entrepreneurship and running companies comes, in my humble opinion, a great responsibility. And the other thing too with Limitless Blue is if my kids are older. Hell, I'm a granddad for Christ's sakes, but I don't have any children living at home, but a lot of the people that worked at RELiON still had young families. And what my hope is that the way that they changed their consumption or started to grow plants at home that they used for salads, or they bought a different product to wash their hair or their clothes, carries on to their children. And it becomes generational, that they live their life in a sense of, hey, this is important. One, we're handing this off to those kids, right? I mean, I look at my grandbaby and I think, my gosh, what we leave is what I leave behind, what we leave behind, she's forced to deal with. And a lot of the employees, their families, their younger kids, they're going to grow up. I used the toothpaste that my mom used when I was growing up, right? So a lot of this is that's what you do. So my hope is these folks are going to use these products from these amazing small companies that are worried about how much plastic or lack of plastic they're putting into our environment. And that to me is exponentially cool. Yeah, because I'll be long gone when these kids and their kids are hopefully living a much cleaner life than I did before this realization set in on me that, it's really freaking important. And people need to set examples. And there's amazing examples out there of just businesses, nonprofit organizations, individuals. We recently had these tornadoes in Mississippi, and I'm the last person to watch the news, but I was walking by and it was on, and there was a group there feeding people. There's so much good in this world, Jeff. There really is. It's just, you got to want to find it. You got to want to live it. And if you focus on those things and do your part, it makes the burden is so much smaller when many are lifting, I guess that's not the saying, but it's sort of my
That's great.
version of the saying.
I like that saying. Yeah, I
And
think
you just keep driving.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the point of this show, and I feel like the point of my life and my relationship with Christine, my wife, and how it is that we operate in the world and what it is that we're up to is really about how do we contribute more. Knowing that, like, if I'm just looking at, well, how do I satisfy my own needs? I mean, it's going to run out so quick. I don't know. I can't even tell you how many people I know that are super unhappy and very wealthy. Like, they just don't know what to do with themselves. They haven't found that deeper purpose, but there is something selfish in being selfless, because in being selfless, then I give myself a greater purpose, and there's less concern over, well, how do I satisfy all the desires and needs that are going on in this body that I don't even really understand? My whole thing about the love operating system, right, is how do we transform our perspective, my perspective, from a greed-based, scarcity-based model that's, has these age-old, whoever knows how many generations it goes back, right? That there's things are going to run out, and I have to, like, find them now. I have to, hunt and gather, to, letting that go, accepting that there are grocery stores now, and we can let so many of these age-old fears that we have go, and then trade that in for, how do I love more? How do I be more loving in my life? How do I be more of service? And what does that give me? And, the reality is that, even though it sounds like, oh, well, that's a selfless act, he's being a good guy. No, it's really selfish in a huge way, because the great joy of serving others is a real thing. And the great joy of being of service is a real thing that allows me to experience more love in my life and be more loving to the people around me that surround me, and lift people up and inspire them, versus just constantly be worried about, how do I get mine?
Giving is the greatest gift you can receive. It really is. There's so much joy that's to your point. It's a very selfish thing, because you or me or whoever, when you're doing something that brings joy, a level of security to others, is just, it's so powerful. It's a drug in and of itself that when you start to experience it, probably, like, I'm not into drugs myself, but it probably the same idea where you just want, your body craves more. And the crazy thing is, Jeff, it doesn't have to be world altering. It can be the simplest thing to bring. I mean, I tell my kids all the time, when you're walking down the street and somebody's approaching you, or somebody's walking out of the bank or the grocery store, or wherever you're at, you have no idea what that person is going through. They could be the smartest, greatest, well-supplied person in the world, or they could have death surrounding them. Maybe they lost a child today, or whatever it is. But if you hold the door, you say, wow, I like your shoes, or you have beautiful eyes, or what, just, it doesn't have to be, you donated $1 million to somebody.
For sure.
It's the little things that build and build and build and build. And exponentially, if everybody taught their children or whatever that those things are important, and those kids started doing it, it goes back to that generational thing. It just expands upon itself. And then from those little things, saying a nice word to somebody or complimenting somebody, you want to do more. You want to find the next level of, hey, how do I make more people feel good? How do I make myself feel better that I'm making others feel good, or supplying water or food or a nice turkey dinner at Thanksgiving, whatever it is. Because so many people probably, and like myself, where do you start? Like, you don't want to become blind at, like, a deer in the headlights. Say, well, I don't have enough. I can't do enough. I'm really not going to make an impact. None of that's true, because the simplest things make really big impacts, and we don't even have to know it.
Yeah. I'm notoriously friendly, and
We have that in common, I think.
yeah, and I think, like, some people question why, why is how do you maintain that, or why is that? And I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just my personality or the way I was born or I was brought up. But I can tell you from my own personal perspective, being friendly, being nice to people, as you say, complimenting them on their whatever, right? As long as it's not creepy.
Sure. I don't know.
Complimenting people
Sometimes I
on their,
mistakenly probably border on that when I tell somebody that they have pretty eyes or your hair is pretty. I'm hoping I'm not offending anybody. That's not my intention.
yeah, and it's up to them to mention it if they are.
Right.
But the point is, like, I know that for me, if I smile at somebody, or if I, like, am cheerful with the person at the checkout counter, or wherever it is that I am, whatever, even the guy, like, who's up here, it's been snowing so much, so there's always some guy that's on the side of the road that's like, hey, you got to doing the chain check, and I always, like, pull down my window and joke with him and, like, thank him for being there, like, really appreciate that person for, because they're looking out for the safety of all of us that are on the road. And I know that if my mo is to make other people happy, then that makes me happy, because I see
For
the
sure.
reaction on their face when I smile at them. They smile back. Well, then we've created this beautiful reciprocal joy that wasn't there before. God only knows, as you say, what they might be going through, or what's going on at home, or who
Right.
what their health situation is, or their parents, or any of that stuff.
You're right. And the converse of that too, Jeff, think about this. You are wherever you're on a plane and there's somebody just being a complete pain in the ass to the flight attendant, or just bringing everybody down around them. I mean,
Yeah.
it has, when you're thinking about the opposite, right? Like, how do you build people up and how do you bring happiness and joy? When you see that, it's exponentially more grating, or it pisses me off to no end. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? So it's
Yeah.
like, if I didn't give a shit and I didn't want to bring, like, I didn't have this overarching want to bring and do in my own very, very, I don't want to, I'm no fucking angel, dude. I've made more mistakes than any person in the world, and I've brought pain to people that I can't even imagine, I'm sure. Not intentionally, probably, but I don't want to sit here and, like, feel like I'm putting myself on a pedestal, because that's not what this is about. I look at what you do with this show. I look at what these amazing people that are doing a million times more than I am doing today, and it makes me want to be better. To the same extent that what I was talking about, when you see these fucking assholes treating other people like shit, or being mean to somebody, or belittling, or feeling like you're better than, dude,
Yeah.
God, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Is
Yeah,
it that important that you build yourself up and make yourself feel better because you belittled? I don't get it. I don't have patience for it. I just,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I feel
I'm done on my tirade there, but
No, I agree. I think, there's two things that I often think about there in regards to that. One is my favorite Dalai Lama quote, which is, "My religion is simple. My religion is kindness."
yeah.
And then also, anytime anybody's belittling somebody else, or being, racist or whatever, or, bullying, they're just trying to take care of their own insecurities. They're projecting their own insecurities onto somebody else so that they don't have to feel the pain that they feel inside. Whereas if
Yeah.
they just actually felt the pain that they felt inside and asked for help, that would totally transform their situation. So there's part of me that also sees, I mean, where we live now, we're up in the foothills in the middle of
You're
California.
in God's country.
somewhere. Yeah. I mean, people love living here. It's
Yeah.
like, it's weird. It's a very, look, I love Los Angeles. Los Angeles was very good to me. I'm sure I'll spend more time there going forward. But there's not the sense where people just love living there. Usually, here, people just really authentically enjoy it, and it's a different culture. And so now I'm more exposed to people who are happy about their lives. But also, whenever I encounter somebody who is being an asshole or belittling other people, like, I know that there's something wounded in them that has them behaving this way, that they think it's okay, and they're just too blind to see it. So I think, that's really why my whole point of this show is really to encourage people to adopt the love operating system, whatever that means to them. Ask themselves, how do I love more? How do I be more loving? How do I be more caring of other people? So that because quite frankly, life is way less painful when you're doing that, because 100%. I'm not worried about my own insecurities and nonsense and things that happened to me so long ago. I'm worried about, well, how do I make a difference? How do I contribute?
Right. And what's interesting too, two things that you said there, Jeff, that really rang true with me. One, you live in a place where people are happy, and you came from Los Angeles. We raised our family in Charlotte, and Charlotte was a tiny little town, was sort of like Mayberry from the old Andy Griffith days when we first moved there 30, almost 40 years ago, probably now. But as the community grew, there was this sense of more. Mm-hmm. Got to have a bigger car. Got to have a bigger house. Got to have this. And then that consumes us, all of us. It consumed me for so long. And then I moved to Montana. And to your point, when you moved to Rough and Ready, it's like, holy shit, there's just a bunch of freaking happy people here. And I don't care if you're talking to the lifty or the bus driver or a multimillionaire that lives up at the YC. There's just, people are genuinely happier.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing, because, I love living. I don't even mind going to the DMV in Montana. The people are actually friendly at the DMV in Montana.
Like 10 minutes last time.
Right. Well, and you don't get the attitude when you walk in the door like, my life is a bitch, so I'm going to make your life a bitch. Right. The other thing that you said that rings so true, and it kind of goes back to one of my opening kind of comments, or, like where I come from, insecurity, right? That's driven me my entire life. In everything. I'm too fat. I'm too slow. I'm too stupid. I'm too whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But in my own crazy way, I've chose to take those insecurities and spin it around. Instead of putting other people down to make myself feel better, I feel like at some level I've created this powerful use of my insecurity to try and bring happiness or joy in going the extra mile in that perspective for selfish reasons, as crazy as that sounds, because the same dude who's shitting on somebody to make themselves feel better, in a lot of ways, I'm doing the opposite to make myself feel better, to feel like there's that I bring value, or I'm worth something more than I feel like I am in my own crazy mind. If that sounds backwards,
totally makes sense. The difference is that the selfishness and being selfless is that it's authentic. That if you're of service to somebody else and that you're making a difference for them, that it matters, that their life is somehow improved in some even tiny way. And so therefore that makes you feel better about yourself, because also there's an interconnection that you're relating to this other person, and you're, in a very real, actual way, you're acknowledging that we are related. We are all related on this planet, and you're building community. So I hear you. I just think like that's and it's really rather impossible to get a big ego about any of that stuff anyway, because it's like there's always going to be more people to help and be of service to.
For sure.
And it comes from a space of like, I know that I'm a piece of shit. Like I know that I'm just as broken as everybody else. And then
that's a great realization.
Yeah,
it is.
And so therefore, like, I'm going to just help you out too, because then we're in this together. It's an acknowledgement of our.
I love that, Jeff. I love your approach and your honesty about who you are and your frailties, right? Because when we can openly admit and share those things, the bond is so much stronger. I've got a lady that I know who talks about, you have friends for seasons and you have friends for life. And, you start thinking about all the people that have come and gone in your life, whether they were high school buddies that you don't keep in touch with, or people you worked with, or somebody you met on the local hockey team, whatever it is, right? And then I look around and I've got this really small cadre of like people that I know that they would meet a stranger on the street and they would do anything for them,
Yeah.
And that those are the relationships that just are so, and it's not even about time. I mean, I've got a couple guys from high school like that, and a couple, my brothers and a couple people I met through my kids. But not even that many years ago, I started swimming when I was doing some training, and I met a guy, and we just started having these really deep and honest conversations. And I think where that really can be super powerful is to the point I made about you. If you can admit your frailties and be honest with others about those, instead of this bravado of, oh, fuck, my life's perfect. And, it's the whole social media thing where nobody's talking about the shit that's not right or how fucked up their life is. They're talking about, I got a new car. I went on this amazing vacation. Yeah, big fucking deal. But what you're doing is you're shedding light on it ain't fucking easy. Life ain't easy. And when you can admit that, like I said earlier, I've made more fucking mistakes and I have more questions about what's real and what's not. You've done some really cool pieces about that and interwoven it into some of your earlier conversations. And I was brought up in a relatively strict Catholic family, and I was following the religion very deeply in a time when my mom was ill with cancer. And then there was this epiphany in me, and I'm not putting down anybody who's religious, but for me, there was this dynamic shift about maybe it's really just about a spirit of being good and kind. And it doesn't matter whether you want to go to a synagogue or a church or wherever in worship in your own way. But if you're just a good person, that's what really matters. So, it's again, the salt and sand of the life that shapes us. And God knows, I hope I still have a lot of salt and sand ahead of me, because in this life, I've heard somewhere recently that each of our lifetimes is in the history of time an exhale of breath. And that really stuck with me. Like, wow, that's right. Like, we come and go so quick. And as you age and you start seeing your friends get sick, and I mean, you wonder like the fairness in life. And, there's all these things that as you mature and get older that I wish I knew more, was more aware of, I'm not real sure what I'm trying to say, but just more alerted to these things. So I had more time to alter or do more. But we're here today, right? And what are we going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do tomorrow? What's your your next venture to be a better person? What's the next compliment you're going to give? And that's, you can't look back with regret because you can't change it anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that the whole point of it is like really the more that the less that I focus on myself and the more that I focus on others, the more that I am able to give to myself, the more happiness I'm able to experience,
Right.
I mean, period. And I feel like we're trained in our culture to just satisfy our own needs and watch our shows and do our things and just not, just have this like tunnel vision about life when there's all these other people around that you're related to that,
Yeah.
So, but I really want to acknowledge you for leading the charge in your company about this. I know you mentioned several times that it's like there are all these other people that are doing bigger things than you were doing. To me, to my wife, I know to the people in your company, what you've done is really a revolutionary act. And it's really beautiful, really makes a difference. And it's a really beautiful example to everybody, particularly entrepreneurs and people in corporate business of any ilk. I mean, you're in the battery business, for crying out loud. Like, and yet there's
not the most glamorous business in the world you could choose.
Right. And
I'm not a rock star like you, Jeff. I mean, come on.
I mean, the point that, right. Yeah.
I mean that with great sincerity, by the way. I wasn't being flippant in my comment.
No, thank you. I didn't. It's just hard for me to hear that. I don't think of myself like that, but thank you.
Yeah, but you know what, Jeff, to your point, it does take a village, whether it's a small village or whatever. And God bless me. I've been so fortunate. I had as much as I want to, my dad's an amazing guy. He's a freaking tank. He's 5 years surviving lung cancer and tumors in his brain and strokes. And, yeah, he was a hard freaking dude to be a son for, still is.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
I had a loving family. My brothers and I are still close. I've had an amazing family of my own. That none of this is possible without all of those folks. Just like all of the accomplishments that RELiON achieved, whether it was in my own belief leading the way into a new industry, but more importantly, understanding how to do that in a way that is responsible to everyone involved and to the broader community. And I just really, I have this great hunger to go do another business that can reinvent that or find a new pivot on what that is. I think that idea drives me more than success in a business from a commercial standpoint, because you start bringing people together in, powerful and exponential things can come from that. And hopefully, we all realize that in the business community as a whole. And I see so many cool things going on. If you want to look for good crap, like we talked about earlier, there's great shit going on out there. There's people doing amazing things that are just so awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
You just have to want to see it. And then I want to steal some of these really cool ideas. I mean,
yeah,
not that I want to make them my own, but I want to help those people do those really cool things. And that's why I find your podcast so you talk about a really kind of varying things, but one stitch that's been in there the entire time is you just sense the quality of the people. I mean, I think the first show that I listened to, and I might not have listened in order, was when you all were talking about trying to stop the mind coming back, right? Into your community. And it was about the reasons behind that were selfish, but they weren't selfish. You want to have clean water. You want to have, you move there for a reason, and you see greed and you say, why? I mean, it doesn't have to be this way. So, the way you weave all of this together, and it's really cool.
Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate that.
Sincerely. I mean, I can't wait for the next, I won't be waiting for this episode to come out, but the other episodes just get me really excited to listen to. And I learned so much. And what it does, Jeff, for folks that step back is, it's like so many other things in life. It makes you feel small. It makes me feel very ill-read or educated, or because there's all of these things.
That's my goal, is to make people feel small.
Well, no. Listen, that's not, but in a powerful way, it makes you realize there's so much more out there, right? There's so much more opportunity. And it's empowering, for lack of a better way to put it, to say, hey, just get off the couch, take your head out of the WhatsApp or whatever social media thing you're doing, and spend some time outside looking around at the beauty that's there, and how much we need to protect it, whatever that looks like in our own, in our own way. For sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying all that. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being Paul Hecimovich. Mm-hmm. I know I just really appreciate you, man. And
well, the same goes here. But one of the things, Jeff, that I just love the most about you is I see the happiness and joy that you brought Christine in your relationship. I mean,
thank you.
I get choked up thinking about it. But well, of course, that's what's powerful, right? I mean, but it was palatable to somebody who's known Christine for as long as I've known her, and not even it's not like she picked up the phone and called me and said, "Oh my God, I got the greatest freaking," I personally saw just this wonderful metamorphosis. And part of that is when people have joy in their life, or water to drink, whatever that is. Obviously, two very different things. But when you have something that means so much and is so sustaining and fulfilling, it's life altering. It really is. And then it just kind of oozes out of you. It's like, oh my gosh, you can't control the joy and happiness. And that's the power of love and caring and being, I guess.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not the Dalai Lama, nor do I play one on TV. I'm just a dumb battery sales guy who has been really blessed in life to have an amazing family and amazing friends that you really realize how special times are, like this, spending time with you or hanging out with a buddy, having a cup of coffee or, whatever that is, because it's just, those are fleeting things, but they're also powerful things, and cool stuff can come of those things, like I just hope the spin-off effect and the generational effect of what you're doing with your podcast is it just continues to exponentially grow and allow people to understand that there's real power in the selflessness and acts of giving and not worrying about scarcity and all these crazy things that we're so worried about.
Yeah. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing maybe the next company from Paul is a nonprofit, maybe.
We'll see. It's so interesting. I think about that all the time. I think, who knows? Man, I'm like a witch doctor. I go to sleep and I cook up all these ideas, and then the next morning I wake up and shoot half of them in the head because they're crappy ideas. And, I still feel like there's a little fuel in the tank, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Awesome. All right, brother. Well, listen,
hey,
I love you. I really appreciate you.
I love you too, man.
I really appreciate the example that you're setting with your life. And I feel super fortunate to have you.
I'll close on saying, I hope people take our conversation in the way that I know we both mean it, that we're flawed and frail and fucked up and mistake prone. But if you get up every day and try to be just a touch better, that's what's important. And
try to give
back. Don't let the past things that you screwed up take you down. Just pick up and move on. And that's what I'm trying to do, because God knows there's a car crashes and ditches behind me that are deep and well hidden, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, great talking with you, Jeff. It's just been an honor and a pleasure, and can't wait to see what you do next. And love and strength to Christine as well, and keep being awesome.
All right. You too, brother. Cheers.